Welcome back to Become a Calm Mama. I'm your host. I'm Darlene Childress. And today on the podcast, I'm talking about sports and other extracurriculars and talking about whether you should have your kids join sports and when, and should you make them stay in the sport if they hate it, and kind of giving you some guidance on those questions. In general, I'm going to be referring to things like sports themselves, formal like basketball, baseball, softball, t-ball, the actual kind of sports, football, whatever it is. But beyond sports, there's also martial arts, there is swimming, there's dance, there's gymnastics. Any of these things, these activities can become like sports. And then, of course, with extracurriculars, we also have music, like learning to play the piano or, play an instrument. We have religious education and tutoring, as well as language learning. So and art, right? There's a lot of different options that you can focus on with your kids. You can be a musical theater family, or you can be really into chess or sports like a baseball family or whatever it is. And it can be really confusing as a parent to figure out, should I make my kid go in a sport or not? Should I make them do art? Should I make them go to tutoring? Should I make them do the things that, you want them to do or you think they should do? So the first thing I want to talk about is just defining what's important to you. If you love a certain sport or you love a certain activity and you want to share that with your child, that makes perfect sense. If it's something that they like and you want to do it together, great, easy. If your child doesn't want to do the thing you want them to do, that's when it gets confusing and it gets challenging. So I want to give you some guidelines and guidance on how to decide about sports and extracurriculars. So first off, in general, any kid under the age of 5 really doesn't need to be in any organized sport or anything formal. Now, if you have them learning language, because that's really important to you, then that makes sense that they would go into a language learning program early. But for most things under 5, your kids don't need any formal programs or training. Their primary job is to learn how to play, to learn how to be in their body, to learn how to move their body and coordinate it and understand rules and directions and listen to the grown-ups and have the motor skills, the attention span, and the way to connect with their peers. That's really their job, is to work on moving their body, learning to listen, and learning to play with others. And they don't need formal settings to do that. They usually get enough formal training of that in their preschool or kindergarten programs. Now, a lot of parents will feel like they should put their kids in some sort of program after preschool ends or on the weekend or something like that. And mostly that's because of the parents feeling that their kid needs it for some reason, needs something extra in their life. So sports are extracurricular, right? We have their regular school and we have their regular family life, and then you're trying to decide if we should add something extra. Now, what I see is that a lot of times parents with young kids find it very difficult to keep their children entertained all day and find it challenging, right? Their kids get really restless and really overwhelmed and dysregulated and easily bored. And so it's like, it feels like it would be nice to have something on the calendar that you go to your little soccer class on Saturday morning, or you go to dance, or you have something kind of formal on the calendar. It helps our mind and it helps us with the idea of like, we're doing something good for our kid, and it'll give us some structure to the afternoon, get them out and about, have them do something. Now, that's great. Is it necessary? No, it's for you. It's for you to create more rhythm, more balanced in-out breath kind of environment for your family. It can be really hard for us as adults to not to have like open-ended hours with no structure, especially if our kids aren't well versed in how to play by themselves. The bummer about having your kid be in formal education setting or formal extracurricular settings throughout their day and throughout their week is that they lose the opportunity for open play. And when you have a kid who hasn't had a lot of time to be in open play, I'm going to define it. When they haven't had a lot of time to be in open play, they are less likely to be comfortable figuring out what to do with themselves when there's nothing scheduled. So it's kind of like a cat chasing its tail. You have a kid who's used to a lot of structure and used to having a lot of direction, like you go to soccer and the teacher's telling you this and that. You go to school, the teacher tells you this and that. You go to your religious education, or you go to ballet, or you go to dance. You go to something and there's an adult and they're guiding you through all the parts of the activity. You go to martial arts, there's a warm up, and then there's the practicing this and there's practicing that. And it's all very structured because adults structure things in order to make it easy to work with children, right? It's chaos if you just like had a birthday party and you're like, I don't know, just let 20 kids play by themselves and figure it out. It's like, that's insane. And so, of course, anybody who runs a program for kids is going to create a program. So you have your kid, they're used to being in a programmed environment. So then when they're not in a programmed environment, they don't know what to do. Then you as the parent feel like, well, it looks like they only do well when they're in a programmed environment. So you kind of keep scheduling it. And your kid doesn't really develop the skills that come from being in an open play environment. Now let's talk about what I'm talking about when I'm talking about open play versus structured play. So anything that's sports, any extracurricular, anything that has an adult involved is a formal instruction. It's formal play. So we talk about free play is this activity that is freely chosen and directed by the participants. The rules aren't always clear. It's not done with a purpose. Like you don't play Hot Wheels in order to like win something, right? You play Hot Wheels, or you play dolls, or you play house, or you play stuffed animals, or cooking, or what, I'm going to make my mom a drink and that's really fun. And the kid is pretending to make you a latte. There's no goal. It's just play. It's just for no purpose. You don't trying to achieve anything except the thing you're doing. So we want our kids to be in environments where they are experiencing free play, where the rules are not given to them by an adult. Let me give you an example of a very simple toy that can be either structured play or free play. And that is, if you think about it, it's Lego. So you have some kids who get their Lego set, they follow all the directions, they get frustrated, they want to do it right, they want to finish the thing, and then they want to have the, car built. That would be structured play. That would be a defined goal where the rules are determined, right? There is even a guidebook. While you can also have Lego and use it like building blocks, and you can do free play with it. So free play, I remember one time Lincoln was really into Lego. He made a whole concert scene with his Legos. So he free built all sorts of different things. We made zoos, we made all this stuff, and we just had a big, huge Lego bin. We still have it. Lego tip, by the way, is I would keep the Legos on a sheet. So imagine a big king size sheet on the ground. You put all your Legos on there. Then I would pick up the four corners of the sheet and lift it up and put it into a big bin. So then whenever we played Lego, we'd play on the sheet. I would pick up the sheet out of the bin. I'd lay it down. Big Lego, smash down all the Legos everywhere, but it would stay on the sheet. And the kids would put the Legos back on the sheet, and then I could pick them up easily. It's a huge Lego solve. But anyway, you can see that there's some games that are structured and some that are not. We call some of those fixed toys or free toys. So a fixed toy is a toy that, you push a button and it tells you an answer, versus blocks or dolls or stuffed animals or cars or even like Playmobil people or little wooden figures. Those you can do lots of different things with them. They're open. Okay, I won't go too far on play. But what we want to see is kids having more and more time to be in free play. But what we're seeing in the research and in the data is that kids have actually less and less time for free play, and then they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to play. Then they want their devices. They want screens, or they want you to play with them, which is fine, but they kind of are always looking for a guide, for an adult to tell them what to do. And that can create future issues with emotional regulation, self-soothing, problem solving, resilience, being able to know yourself, what you like, what you don't like. All these things that we want for our kids, they do happen in play. And so we want to give our kids chances to move their bodies with open-ended equipment. So instead of running drills as a 6-year-old with a soccer ball, right? Taking a ball and kicking it back and forth and seeing, oh shoot, I kicked it over there. And now I got to go run and grab it and kick it back, and playing with your parent or a sibling or a friend and creating your own game. So moving your body with open-ended equipment, not structured. This is what you do with this ball. This ball goes in that net. The ball can become a free toy instead of a fixed toy and can be used for many, many different games. So a regular bouncy ball is so much better for a kid than a highly specific basketball, football, soccer ball, softball, baseball. Now, I'm not trying to knock these sports. I'm not. I think that there's a lot of value in sports, and I'm going to talk about that. But I want you to see that when you have your kids in structured stuff and you have them using fixed tools and fixed toys, then they don't get the experience of open-ended play. So going to the park and being able to use, pretend you're on a spaceship and you're jumping and running and you're hiding and all of those games that kids play. They imagine that they really are on a spaceship and that they're sliding down into outer space from the slide. And all that imaginative play is the beauty of being a kid. And we want to give them as many opportunities as we can. That's why going to the park is really helpful. Having a trampoline, having scooters and bikes, going on hikes, doing dance parties in your house. Like I said, playing ball with your parents or your peers, bouncing and throwing balls, seeing how hard you can throw. It doesn't have to be a ball. It can be a rock into a creek or a rock against a wall. Now, is there some risk? Yeah, there's some inherent risk in play, but there's inherent risk in everything. More kids are injured in sport than they are in play. That more children have injuries when they play organized sports with an adult than when they play open play. Isn't that fascinating? So we want to see our kids jumping off low walls and mucking around in the mud and learning to swim in an appropriate way, playing tag, having foot races, pretending sword fights and wrestling, and using their body and developing their muscles and getting those motor skills is very, very important. If you want to have a kid who's athletic, let them be experiencing their body and experimenting with their body and using their body in a variety of ways. That's how athleticism is built. It's not by becoming a very good baseball player by learning a lot about baseball. We really want our kids to be in control of their bodies and understand how far they can push their body and where the boundaries are physically. So, of course, when you have your kids in organized sports, right, it takes away time for play. There's an adult leader. The rules are predetermined. So the game is structured in a very specific way. You have offense, you have defense, you have positions. If you're in a recital position, you're in dance, you're supposed to do this dance, like this type of arabesque and this kind of twirl. I don't know anything about dance. Gymnastics, it's like, here's this type of somersault. Here's this cartwheel. Here's this back bend. It's very specific, and it's the teacher says, now we're doing this. So what's cool is when you have free playtime, they get to use their body. They learn how to manage conflicts without adults around. Like if they're playing spaceship, I told you to go down the slide and go into outer space. No, you didn't. I don't want to go in outer space. And they start fighting over outer space. And then they come to you maybe eventually and ask you for help. But in a sport or extracurricular class, it's so much more structured, right? They can't fight over things like that. But you can see kids, they always want to make it a game. Even when they're playing a game, they want to make it a game because just sport in itself usually isn't enough for them. It's not a game to them until they create some sort of open, freely chosen play for its own sake. So fascinating. Now, of course, there are benefits of sport, right? It is good for physical movement. Although if you think about going to a martial arts class or even a gymnastics class, you might be waiting your turn a lot, right? You might be listening to directions a lot. And there's a lot of time where the kid is not moving their body, and in their mind, they're like trying to understand what's happening, and they have to do a lot of self-regulation at a practice or at the gym. They have to really be paying attention like they are in school, and you send them to the sport thinking, oh, this is going to be so great. They're going to get all this energy out. And you get a kid who's super dysregulated and acts like they have more energy than when you took them in the first place. And that is because they've been building cortisol and adrenaline, trying to understand the rules and trying to be a good kid and trying to follow directions. And that needs then to be released. So it's probably better for you to like pick them up and then let them play a little bit, in the parking lot or, at the park or in the gym or whatever it is, let them kick the ball a little bit, because then that's their free play. So fascinating to me how we think our kids are going to burn off energy, but yet they don't. But as they get older, it can be very tiring. Going to a soccer game where you're playing and running the whole time is very exhausting, for sure. But a lot of the practices aren't really like that. And a lot of kids sit on the bench. And so it doesn't really, do that for you. But it can. Of course, there's team building. That's a benefit of being in a sport or working in a dance program or a ballet or anything like that, or on musical theater, any of those extracurriculars that require a team. That's really cool because you are problem solving. Again, the adult is doing a lot of the problem solving and telling the kids what to do, but you are learning that you are part of a team and building towards something that is cool. Another benefit of sport, which you're not going to love this, but it is the fact that you have to do it even when you don't want to, because you made a commitment to go, you signed up for it, you paid for it, and your team is relying on you, and maybe you don't want to go. That's true for me. I don't always want to go to the gym or do something that I've signed up for. I'm like, I don't want to do that today. And I have to overcome my resistance and go do it anyway. And that builds resilience, that builds integrity, that builds character. But as the parent of the kid who doesn't want to go, that can be really hard, because you then have to hold that resistance, have compassion for it, while also keeping the boundary of you are going anyway. Little tip for limit setting on sports, I would have my kids, I'm going to give you specific guidelines in a second, but I'd have my kids sign up for a sport a season. So in our community, fall was soccer, winter was basketball, spring was baseball. They would do martial arts sometimes, different sports at different seasons. I'm thinking Lincoln did not play baseball, so I'm kind of wondering what he did in the spring. I don't remember, to be honest. But we would say, okay, you guys have to pick a sport. So that was after 6, they had to pick something to do. So they would pick, and then we'd sign up, and we'd say, okay, this class is $350 or whatever it cost. And then I said, I'm happy to pay for this as long as you participate. Okay. So then if they didn't want to go, I would break it down. I'd be like, well, each lesson is $12. This would be true for musical instruments, for anything really that I have bought or signed them up for. I'd say, I pay when you go, you pay when you don't go. So the minute that my kids were like, I don't want to go, I'd be like, okay, well, it's $22. So you'll have to either sell some of your toys or work for me to earn $22. You'll have to call the coach. Here's their phone. You can call them, let them know why you don't want to come, and then write a letter to your team, the next time you go, explaining why you didn't show up for them. And pretty much the kids would be like, okay, forget it. I'll just go. And they would resolve to go. So I still had to hold that boundary. I still had to do that. But how can I make them physically put their cleats on or go get out the car? So sometimes I'd say, well, we're going, hop in the car. They'd still hop in the car and say, oh, I'm not going to play. That's not up to me. My job is to get you here and to make sure you're available to your team. If you want to have resistance or create a problem for your team, well, that's on you to figure out how to solve that problem. So most of the time, kids have their resistance because they have it rightly. They don't feel comfortable going. We want to have some compassion while holding the boundary, letting them deal with the consequences of their actions. Not giving in, but also not rescuing when they are uncomfortable, if that makes sense. If you are confused by that, reach out, let me know. We can talk it through. You can join the Calm Mama Club and I'll help tell you all about how to set limits like that. Now, one of the other pressures we have about doing sport or extracurricular activities, we think, okay, right, it's something to do, but then it turns out it doesn't really help them. Sometimes there's resistance. Sometimes they don't want to go. Sometimes they don't get their energy out. It can be a pain in the butt, but your brain will say, oh, this will be so good because it'll give us something to do on Mondays. And then you're like, well, this was a disaster. So sport's not always the answer to your parenting issues, right? Kind of creates new issues. We think it'll give kids athletic skill. It can, but it's not necessary that they learn a specific sport at a young age. Another reason that parents want to do it is they feel pressure that they want to keep make sure their kids keep up with their peers. They want to make sure that their kids are strong and athletic. And everyone else is doing it, feels like we should do it. Now, the truth is that the body, it can't really it learns things really easily when it's little, for sure. But only once your body has some motor skill, once you have some control over your body, once you have some executive functioning. That's why I recommend not doing sport until after age 6. But what's really cool is that anywhere along the way from 6 to 12, the body is really good about learning a new skill, a physical skill. So if you have a kid start soccer, say at 6, or dance at 6, or you have a kid start at 8 or 9, it doesn't really make a huge difference unless the child has never done anything athletic before. And I mean athletic by moving their body. So if you have a kid who's really played at the park and, was always on your trampoline and rolling around and doing dance in the house and cartwheels and all the physical movement, they have a lot of strength inside their body. They have a lot of motor control. So they're going to be able to pick up on different sports. That's why we don't need kids to be specializing in a sport at a young age. So what do I mean about specializing in a sport? It really is the idea that your kid only does one thing year round, that they become almost like a professional in some way, is that they just do that sport all the time. We see this a lot with dance. You can see it with a lot with baseball, where the specializing comes pretty early, sometimes with soccer as well. I mean, with all sports, hockey, really just kind of anything, you can have your kid be a specialist in a sport at a young age. And it's not really, the data shows that sports participation peaks. I'm reading this quote. Data indicates that sports participation peaks at age 11 and is followed by steady decline through the remainder of the teen years. So if you have a kid specialize in a sport too young, before they have found their own desire for it, they might quit by the time they're 11 or 12 or 13. They might give up on it when they need it the most. It is ideal for our kids to be in a specialized sport in the latter years, or a specialized activity, so that they feel that it's part of their identity and they can build affiliation when they're in adolescence with, I'm in drama, or I'm a soccer player, or I do dance. We want our kids to find identity and attachment with their peers through affiliation and in adolescence. That's helpful for their identities, especially if it's like, around a sport or, musical theater or anything really that's, participating with a group. It could be martial arts, even like I'm a second degree black belt and I'm working on my third degree. Like if they have an identity around it, it's good. But what we see is if we have a kid specialize too early, they quit before they even really benefit from being in that sport. So we want our kids to be in sports in adolescence. And so that means that throughout elementary school, you want to expose them to sports and expose them to the opportunity to play sport, to do musical theater, to do art, to do gymnastics, to do dance, to do all these different activities. Chess, we did chess for a while, and find themselves whether they love it or not, and figure out what they want to do in adolescence and how they want to show up, in sport and in their extracurriculars. So my recommendation is that you don't have kids in organized sport until age 6. If you have been doing it and it works for your family, great. No worries, okay? You don't have to change anything. You don't have to quit anything. But if you find yourself like, this is a struggle and my kid doesn't like it, or they only like it for like once, and you're like fighting with them to go to some kind of organized activity outside of school, and they're in kinder and younger, you can just drop it. You can feel free that you're not hurting any of their development, that you're not causing a future problem, that there's no issue. I followed the guidelines in Simplicity Parenting, written by Kim John Payne. It's a book that I've read many, many times throughout my parenting journey. In this book, he recommended around age 8, and that has to do with their cognitive development of when they can understand what it means to be in a team, to do team sports. So we were waiting till 8 with our kids. Lincoln did soccer at 8, and then Sawyer really wanted to do it too. So the following year he started, and so he was 6 when he started, I think maybe 7. And so he did it a little bit earlier. Same with video games. We were like, we wanted Lincoln to start at 11, but we knew Sawyer would start. So we started Lincoln at 12, Sawyer at 10. And then I've told that story before that it didn't work out. We had to take the video games away from Sawyer because 10 was too young. So you're going to see what works for your kid. Maybe you try in first grade and it's not right. They hate it. They're fighting you. Okay, fine. Just maybe you don't do sport in first. You wait until age 7, wait until age 8. You could never do it if you don't want to as well. It's okay. You don't have to put your kids in sport, but there are benefits of it. So I like to do one physical activity per season. So if that's a martial arts, great. If that's swimming, excellent. If that is dance, gymnastics, even musical theater can be very physical. There's a lot of, dancing and things like that. Of course, just organized sports like softball, soccer, baseball, things like that. I want you to give your kids opportunity to try out many different things. Don't feel like, they need to stick with one thing because they played soccer last year. They have to play it this year. You can just try something new. Now, I do think if a kid commits to a season, most of the time, it's good for them to stick to that season and go all the way through. Of course, there are circumstances that mean that it's not like you entered the sport too early and you need to regroup and do it like just quit. That's fine, especially if it's not a big team thing. You can kind of stop and start easily. But if you do sign up for something, hold your kids accountable, commit to it, give them consequences if they don't go, and continue to make it be a priority. The more you value it, the more important it is to you, the more you communicate that, the easier it will be for you to hold boundaries and that for your kids to trust that you're serious. So shorter commitments and shorter seasons are helpful, especially if you don't know for sure if it's a good fit or not. Again, avoid specializing in a sport until age 11. Realizing that specializing in a sport means travel ball, year-round, highly specialized activity like trainers and things like that. Really think about how important it is for your family to prioritize this skill. Do you think it's going to serve them when they're in high school? Do you think it's going to serve them when they are post high school? Are they going to play college ball or participate in this activity in college? Are you training them for beyond, like for professional sports? If your child is on a professional track, of course, you're going to be very, very focused and do highly specialized environment early. But how are you even going to know that until you've tried a few different things? So try a couple different things, see where they're at. 9, 10, kind of maybe, you do a little travel ball, like a little all-stars, see how that feels for your family, then commit to year-round if you want. Our family, we did not commit to year-round sports because it was a lot of weekend travel. We tried it out as a family. We did all-stars, we did travel ball a little bit, extras, I think they were called. And it really was so challenging because my husband worked around 70 to 80 hours a week, no joke, and was available on some weekends. And we chose as a family to prioritize family time at home, in our house, playing in our house versus being on the road and being on the side of a soccer field at restaurants and things like that. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. It was the right thing for us as a family because of our lifestyle. So when you decide what you're going to do, you need to figure out what you can financially commit to and what your lifestyle will support. If you are an overwhelmed, busy person, and now you have 3 kids and you're going to be driving 3 people to 3 different activities every afternoon, that might not be the right fit for you. It might not work for your family. It might create so much stress and dysregulation that it's not worth the effort. If you want to raise an emotionally healthy kid, their environments need to be emotionally healthy. The air they breathe and the water they swim in and the activities they do need to be emotionally healthy in order for them to be emotionally healthy, if that makes sense. So, specializing if it works for you, signing up for things if it works for you. I think of this as a slow sport approach. So we're going into sport, but we're going slowly, right? We're going to explore. We're going to be curious. Now, when you're in a slow sport approach, you need to find other families who are not highly scheduled, who have open afternoons. It's one of the challenges is if every kid is in sport all the time and then in tutoring and in music and in, all these activities every afternoon, there's no time for open play with peers. So finding the other families, the other parents who are also available. And that means being a little social, talking to some parents, finding out what their kids are doing. Instead of being like, oh, your kid is doing that, I should do that too, and sign up for stuff. I'd rather you say, oh, well, what day are you free? Because we would love to meet you at the park or meet you on a hike or meet at the public pool or the lake or wherever, or have them over, and make plans for kids to get together to have open play. Unfortunately, we do have to plan open free play because everyone is so scheduled. We don't have just kids hanging out in the neighborhood. If you do have that, excellent. You're so lucky. I'm so happy for you. But for most people, all the kids are in activities all afternoon, and we have to be able to find other people. Now, the cool thing is when you find a group and there's a couple families that have kids that aren't so scheduled, then like my friends, like my mom friends, we'd be like, oh, let's sign them up for this, but what day should we do it? And then we'd leave other afternoons open so that we could play together. So it was really great. I always like to have Fridays with no sports. I would get so annoyed if there was sports on Friday because I wanted to have free play on Fridays. Now, the last little tip is that when your kids aren't in school and aren't doing sport or any activity, establish screen-free windows so that they are bored and they learn to create games and play at home and do that free play. What we're seeing in parent education right now and in parenting is that kids are overscheduled, right? They go from school to activity to home. And then in those little pockets of windows, parents don't want to deal with the dysregulation because the kid is so overwhelmed because they haven't had a lot of downtime that then they're given a screen. So there's not a lot of opportunity in the day for the kid to develop this free play, self-directed exploration. So the more screen-free time you have, the more free play time you're creating. So it's not like, oh, let's limit screens because they're terrible. I want you to think about it instead of when I have screens, that limits my kids' chance for free play. So the more opportunity you give them for free play, the better. And remember that when your child is transitioning from any activity, there will be dysregulation. And be ready for it. Right before they go to the sport or the enrichment activity, they will probably have a little bit of a big feeling cycle. Right afterwards, they may have to come down from that, from all of the, other kids and the directions and the learning and the frustration and whatever. So build in little moments where you reconnect, where you let their body move around a little bit, where you have some chances for giggles, for making sure that they're well nourished, like well-timed snacks, things like that, so that they can transition back into the family life. All right, this was a longer episode than I thought it was going to be, and I feel like I could probably have shared more about when they're resisting going, but listen back and find that little part where I talked about it. And if you have any questions, reach out. You can always book a complimentary discovery session with me, and I can talk to you through what my programs look like. You can join the Calm Mama Club. That's $30 a month. We meet weekly. Not a lot of people in there, so you get to raise your hand, ask me questions, get the full Calm Mama course, all the things. So that's a great opportunity for you. If you want to know more, reach out and I will tell you all about it. And I'm wishing you a week full of free play that is pleasant and peaceful, and where your kids are highly engaged in their own activities, especially because they hopefully got a bunch of new fun stuff over the winter holidays, and they can just enjoy all their new toys. Okay, mamas, I will talk to you next week. Hey mama, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, I want to encourage you to do two things. The first is go to my website, calmmamacoaching.com, and get a copy of the Stop Yelling cheat sheet. You'll get a step-by-step breakdown of the most important tool I teach, which is the pause break. And you'll also get 40 ideas to reset your body and balance your nervous system so you don't have to yell at your kids. You can get a copy of that, again, at my website, calmmamacoaching.com/stop yelling. The other thing I'd love for you to do is go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this podcast so that other moms can discover empowering and helpful, practical parenting strategies, just like you did today. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. It means a lot to be in your ear every week and to support you on your parenting journey.